Okay, I now declare the May 2025 Agenda Briefing Forum open at 6:30 p.m. and welcome all of those in attendance. I would like to invite Councillor Barber to read the acknowledgement to country.
Good evening. The City of Melville acknowledges the Bibbulmun people as the traditional custodians of the land on which the city stands today and pays its respect to the Wadjuk people and elders both past and present.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. I now draw your attention to the disclaimer on the screen. The affirmation of civic duty and responsibility on the screen. The advice of audio-visual live streaming and recording on the screen. And the purpose of the Agenda Briefing Forum on the screen. All right, item 2, attendance and apologies. We have the following councillors attending electronically with my permission. Can you please confirm your attendance? Councillor Wheatland.
Yes, here.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. There are no councillors on approved leave of absence, and finally Councillor Ross has submitted an apology for this evening. So declarations by members. We now move on to those declarations. Are there any declarations by members who have not read and given due consideration to all matters contained in the business papers presented before the meeting tonight? Moving on to the second item, declarations by members who have received and not read the elected members' bulletin. Okay, let's move on to item 4, announcements by the presiding member. Approved deputation. One deputation has been approved for tonight's meeting from Mr. Steskal, Miss Moreno and another Miss Moreno of Fremantle in relation to item E2567, request for removal of street tree 21 Ferguson Street, Alfred Cove. I will call you forward prior to the discussion of these items to make your deputation to council. Approved written submissions. There are no written submissions that have been approved for this evening. Item 5, disclosure of interest. Can the Head of Governance please advise if there are any disclosures of interest for this evening? Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, one disclosure of interest has been received from Ms Bowman, the CEO. That is in relation to item C25-272, confidential employee matter. Ms Bowman is declaring an impartiality interest and will remain in the meeting. Thank you.
Are there any further disclosures from elected members? All right, moving on to public question time. I now open public question time at 6:33. We have no questions have been received with notice for this evening. Are there any questions from the gallery? Okay, if there are no questions from the gallery, I will now close the meeting, the public question time at 6:33 p.m. Item 7, awards and presentations. This item will be dealt with at the ordinary meeting of council. Item 8, applications for new leaves of absence. This item will be dealt with at the ordinary meeting of council. Number 9, confirmation of minutes. This item will be dealt with at the ordinary meeting of council. Item 10, new business of an urgent nature. There is no new business of an urgent nature. Item 11, identification of matters for which meeting may be closed. Item 25-272, confidential employee matter, has been identified as confidential. I will hold this item to the end of the meeting so we can move behind closed doors if elected members wish to discuss it. Additionally, the following items have been identified as having confidential attachments. C25-269, 410 Canning Highway, Attadale, commercial optimisation investigation, and item C25-270, 788 to 794 Canning Highway, Applecross, commercial optimisation investigation. Should elected members wish to discuss the confidential attachments, The items will be held until the end of the meeting, and I will call for a motion to go behind closed doors. Item 12, petitions. There are no petition items for discussion this evening. Number 13, adoption of recommendations en bloc. This item will be dealt with at the ordinary meeting of council. Moving on to reports. Now, so we now move on to the items for this evening, and for the convenience of those providing a deputation this evening, I would like to bring forward the following item. E2567, request for removal of street tree, 21 Ferguson Street, Alfred Cove. Prior to discussion on this item, I'd like to invite Mr. Stashkal, I'm not certain how to pronounce that, Miss Marino and another Miss Marino forward to make their deputation. So please make your way forward to the microphone. You have 10 minutes to present, with a further 5 minutes for elected members to ask questions.
Madam Mayor, my name is Gabriel Moreno, and I'm here with my wife, Mrs. Moreno, and our architect, Philip Steshkal. I'll get them to introduce themselves.
Sorry, could you speak up, please? We're having trouble hearing you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, councillors, my name is Gabriel Moreno, the owner of the property in question. I'm here with my wife. I'll let her present herself, and also with my architect, Philip Steshkal.
Hello everyone, Madam Mayor. My name is Lena Moreno. I'm here with our architect to present for Ferguson Street. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, staff and elected members. Oh yes, there it is. And can I click through with the buttons? Oh, right, okay, apologies. If we can, yeah, we'll leave it at that slide for now. Thank you for agreeing to consider our request at next week's council meeting, and for the opportunity to present this deputation tonight. My name is Philip Stashkal. I'm the architect for this project, working alongside Megha Patel, who's in the audience tonight as well. You've met Gabe and Lena already, the owners of 21 Ferguson Street. We're here to formally request the replacement of 2 verge trees as outlined in the application lodged in March this year. The request relates to a condition of development approval granted in the same month. More importantly, I would like to use this time to assure you about our clients' genuine commitment to becoming thoughtful and responsible custodians of the lush verge they've inherited since they purchased the property a few years ago. From the outset of the design process, Gabe and Lena made it very clear to us that one of their key goals was to create a strong connection between their home and the surrounding landscape, particularly Wireless Hill Park. They expressed a desire to feel as though they were living within the park itself, and to contribute meaningfully to the local ecosystem through their garden and their stewardship of the verge. They also aspire to live in a sustainable house, one that would respond naturally, one that responds naturally to the seasons and offers ample daylight and passive ventilation throughout. In response, we designed a courtyard house that embraces the garden, offering light and airflow to all spaces, while maintaining a gentle, integrated presence within the landscape. If I could please ask you to change the slide. Thank you. But more significant than the architecture alone is our client's deeper ambition to extend the ecosystem of Wireless Hill Park into their property. To help realise this vision, we engaged a landscape architect, Anu Tran, as a key member of the design team from the beginning. The resulting landscape proposal prioritises local species and materials, long-term resilience and biodiversity. As I walk you through the design in a second, I hope you will see the sincerity of our client's vision and their dedication to nurturing the local environment, both within their property and across the adjoining verge. I thought I could step you through the slides now. So this one shows, I guess, the landscape architect's design response, so focusing on local materials, the longevity of the foliage and the canopy cover, and the diversity of endemic species. If I can please ask you to go to the next slide. This one sort of demonstrates, as per the application, a couple of trees that are, I guess, not aligned with that, with the overall sort of intent. One relates to the DA condition to install a crossover, a compliant crossover, and the other one is an invasive species, a rubber tree. Next slide, please. This slide shows a number of different options for the replacement species. So the idea is that we would sit down with the Parks Department, with Council, and sort of work through which one's the most suitable. But they're all sort of suitable from an ecosystem point of view. Next slide, please. This is an image from Ferguson Street, looking up towards Wireless Hill Park, showing one of those potential species with the pink flowers, and I guess the understory that the landscape architect proposes to establish, and also, I guess, how that merges with the vegetation that's planned for the site itself. So the house sort of melds into the landscape. Next slide, please. So the next few slides are showed in plan view. You can sort of see the continuation of the verge with the sort of teal green and a slightly different approach, Mediterranean approach for the courtyards. Next slide, please. This just focuses on the understory. So we can move to the next slide as well. A cross-section, again, showing the existing trees in the background, and then continuing that idea to the verge and to the garden with the Mediterranean trees in the centre. Next slide, please. Just some paving treatments that are, again, sort of designed to be natural and integrating. Next slide, please. And this is, I guess, the final image, which sort of shows you the species that are proposed for the trees. And there is actually one more slide, if you could please move to the next. And that just shows the understory. Again, endemic species that are designed to diversify the sort of vegetation in keeping with the native sort of endemic vegetation. So that concludes the presentation. So I just wanted to summarise quickly. We acknowledge that removing trees is never a decision to be taken lightly, nor should it be. However, in this case, we believe the proposed changes represent a thoughtful and we believe necessary step towards a better long-term outcome for both the property and the community. One of the existing verge trees, as I've explained, must be relocated to enable a compliant crossover. The other tree, being an invasive species, is recommended to be replaced, a rubber tree. Replacing both these trees with endemic varieties offers an opportunity to enhance the local ecosystem in a more sustainable and meaningful way. We just wanted to state that it's not a matter of convenience. It's about aligning these short-term actions with the longer-term vision, one that prioritises our clients' environmental stewardship, the urban biodiversity of the region, and the deeper connection to place. So just in last paragraph, what our clients are seeking to do is not just build a home. They are looking to make a commitment to the community and to the environment they've chosen to be a part of. We hope Council can see this small sacrifice as enabling a far richer and more enduring benefit for the years to come. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Elected members, do you have any questions for the Deputy, Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Excuse me, thanks for the presentation. I've been to the property, but I'm not following the story. Are you removing all the trees, or
No. Just
there's one tree that the neighbor wanted to remove. That's in the driveway.
Yes.
So, are you going ahead with that, removing just one tree and replacing that? So you're only talking about one particular tree at the corner.
Look, there's one particular tree that relates to a condition to the development approval, which is to establish a compliant crossover. Originally in the proposal, in our discussions with the planning department, we looked at creating an alternative crossover solution that would retain that tree, essentially like a metal grate that would preserve the root system. But because of, I guess, maintenance concerns and the fact that it was a non-standard driveway, it wasn't possible for the Verge Department to approve that alternative solution. So really the only avenue for us was to seek the removal of a replacement of that tree, which is why we're here tonight. So we're intending to replace that tree with something that's more endemic, more local, because the box tree is actually an imported species. And the other tree on on the side street is a rubber tree. So that was also part of our development application and this tree removal application because it's quite an invasive species, and to sort of establish an endemic biodiverse environment across from Wireless Hill, we really need to get rid of that rubber tree as well. So it's 2 trees, which are shown on that one of the initial diagrams, but we're replacing them with a selection of native trees.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thanks very much. And I actually have 2 questions because the information that we've had prepared for us, the officer's report, deals only with the removal of the box tree. So I now understand that in fact 2 trees are being removed, one to enable a crossover at the location you want, and then the other on the basis that it's not native and doesn't fit the vision. I just wonder, on the question of the crossover, I understood, and again, correct me if I'm wrong here, there is already a compliant crossover at this property, isn't there?
There is a crossover. It's not entirely compliant. It's still too close to 2 trees. So there's a tree either side of the crossover on the side street, and those are closer than 2 metres to the driveway at the moment. So we would have a situation, I guess, if we were to maintain the crossover where it currently is, we would have to address the issue of compliance as well.
Sure, but I mean, I'm kind of looking at the photo of the property here, and perhaps the one on the, I guess that's the south side, is a bit close. The one on the north side might be just shy of 2 metres, but it would depend where you measure. But I guess it invites the question, there is a crossover on the property. Presumably there's a design solution that allows that to be maintained, and that would remove the need to get rid of the box tree, wouldn't it?
Look, that is an option that we've looked at, and we discussed that with the Verge Department. So the reason why in the end we decided to come back and sort of present this to council is because the optimal design, architectural solution for the site in terms of optimising passive solar design, getting as much light north light into as much of the house as possible, really requires a central courtyard, and the logical avenue is a central courtyard. And basically, if we put the cars to the south, it just squeezes that central courtyard, and the I guess the single-story solar passive design approach starts to be significantly compromised. And our clients don't want to go to 2 stories; they want to sort of keep it low, and that was, I guess, one of the reasons that pushed us to present this tonight. I'm not quite sure where to look.
Apologies, no, you don't need to look at me. Madam Mayor, I've just got a question for the officers afterwards, not the opponent.
Thank you. Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With the removal of the Queensland box tree that you're coming to council about now, so with that tree, it appears to have quite a healthy canopy to it.
Yep.
So you said you're willing to replace it with another tree.
Yep.
In Wireless Hill? Was that what you were talking about when you were mentioning Wireless Hill, or where are you looking at replacing it?
No, on the site.
Oh, on the same site, perfect.
I can.
So, sorry, no,
Yes.
no, it's okay. I just got a little bit conflicted with
Sorry,
what you were saying about Wireless Hill.
The reference to Wireless Hill is because the landscape architect has designed the landscape strategy for the property almost as if Wireless Hill were to extend into the site.
Ah, okay, I understand.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, with the Queensland box tree that's currently there,
Yep.
like I said, I'm not even sure the height and the width of the tree canopy. Did you have any discussions, or is there been any consideration you will replace it with a more mature tree than
Yep.
just putting in a seedling or a sapling that's going to take years to grow to the same height and the tree canopy that's already there?
No, the intention is definitely to replace it with a mature tree. It's not going to be as big as the one there, just in terms of what can be purchased and transplanted and the logistics of it, but it'll definitely not be a seedling. It'll be a sizable, mature sort of tree of several years, and a sort of a big sort of pot size, or the way they sort of
May I have a follow-up, please, on that question?
Yes.
Thank you. So do you have an image of the tree you're looking
Yes,
at
so
replacing it with?
if I can go back to the presentation, probably the initial one of the plans. So that's probably a good one if we can enlarge that possibly. But so essentially the tree next to the driveway, to the north of the drive, sorry, to the up the page from the driveway, on the verge, the one that's hatched, I guess that's more solid than the existing trees, which are shown more greyed out. That's the tree in question. I just wanted to clarify that in our application that was submitted to the Verge Department, the Parks Department, as well as the original DA, it does talk about both trees, and the reason we talk about both trees is because the tree on the top of the page is a rubber tree, and it just feels it's very out of place in the sort of native setting that our clients want to create. But if we go to the next, if we move down through the pages, there is. Sorry, it might actually be further forward. Apologies. If we go back towards the front, and one more. Here we go. So these are the options for the trees that we would replace with, and it'll be as mature as possible. That allows us to sort of purchase and have it transplanted, and we're happy for that to be a discussion with council. And in fact, the selection of the tree, we're envisaging that it would be a discussion with council or the Parks Department.
So you did have discussions with the officers regarding this?
We've had discussions with the Parks Department, the Verge Department, certainly with the planning officer. I've had discussions with a number of councillors, so we've had discussions with multiple people at the city, and but not to say that our discussions are, we're very happy to engage in further discussions. I guess we just feel that this is an avenue worth pursuing because it allows a house that is well orientated, stays single story, and has the courtyard that faces Wireless Hill, allowing that integration, but also to realise our client's desire to really make the most of this, live here long term, a forever home, and look after the Verge.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you. Thanks, Madam Mayor, and thanks for your presentation. The house looks amazing, I've got to say.
Thank you.
I've got 3 questions.
Mm-hmm.
Because Councillor Fitzgerald already raised the questions I had about it not being 1 but 2 trees. So just based on your answers to Councillor Spanbrook, then the Queensland box tree, is that the rubber tree, is that on the side of the property that faces Wireless Hill where the existing crossover is?
That's right. Yep, it's not directly next to the crossover, but it's the one further along.
It abuts it, does it?
It's not the abutting one, it's the one further north of the abutting one.
The abutting tree onto the existing crossover is actually on the neighbour to the south's verge.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm looking at a plan on page 2, attachment 2, page 230 of 397, and where the existing house is. And what I'm looking at is what is the existing crossover, and it looks like the tree that's to be removed, the rubber tree that you want to be removed, is right next to that driveway. I just wanted.
Yeah. So actually, if we can go to the plan which shows the dash trees, you might be right. I might. Yeah. Sorry.
It's okay.
We'll have a look in a sec. We'll see in a second. It's certainly on that side.
I'm going to drive past there tomorrow now and have a look at this. So I've got a couple of other questions.
There we go. So I think it's before that. One more. Keep going. Forward. And again.
I think they've got to go to the beginning.
Yeah. So sorry. If we go back to the beginning, sort of thing. I think it's the second or third slide. We'll see. Yes, this one.
That's the one?
Yep.
Yep.
No, actually, you're right. So it is the one, yeah, so not to the north of the driveway.
Okay, thank you. So another question I've got is in relation to when you filed your application, did you guys seek formal approval under our tree policy? Because there's a condition 8 of the development approval. Did you
So, well, what we did is we lodged the DA with a request to replace these two trees.
Yep.
And then we were advised to lodge, because I think as part of the DA that was knocked back. And then we were advised to, I guess, challenge that decision. The clause CP 29, policy 29, has a provision that allows us to do that. And that was our only option that was left to us because the alternative crossover solution wasn't accepted.
Yeah, because okay, all right. I'll ask that question of the officers. The other thing I've got to ask is, if I look at the plans, your new plans, and where you've got the driveway on the other side where you want to remove the box tree, and the driveway width is 3.3275, and you look at the existing driveway, is that the same width?
Look, I couldn't tell you what the width of I'd have to check what the width of the existing driveway
I just
is.
can't see it properly on the plan, that's all. It's covered up by something.
Yeah, no, I would have to. We've got a survey, so we can confirm that.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, it is. It's 25 centimetres less. Is there any way, and this is just a question, so please, I'm just trying to get my ducks in a row. Would you consider switching your carport round to the other side, or would that be a complete redesign of your property?
Yes, that was the question from the previous councillor, and no, that's fine. I'm happy to repeat it. So the reason why we've got it where it is just to achieve a solar passive design by putting the cars
with Wireless Hill. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so which then faces towards the courtyard, faces towards Wireless Hill. So putting the cars on the south just pushes everything further up towards the north. We want to give the trees, the northern verge trees, enough space, so that's why we've angled the front of the building. But essentially, if we push it up from the south by putting the cars there, that central courtyard becomes a bit less meaningful in terms of its size.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My questions have been answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from elected members? Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. How many trees? I was trying to find it. How many trees are currently on the property?
There's 8.
8?
Oh,
There's actually 7 on the verge, but there are 8 verge trees that are impacting the property. So there's an existing tree on the south side on the neighbour's property, which is adjacent the existing driveway.
Right.
If we were to develop on that, we would have to be 2 metres separation from that driveway and would push the driveway, a new driveway, further north again.
Okay. So, sorry, just getting back to my question. So there's currently 7 trees on the property, including the verge trees?
so just the verge trees, yeah.
There's 7 verge trees?
7 verge trees, yes.
Including the umbrella tree, rubber tree and the Queensland box. So if you remove those 2, you'd still have 6.
Yes, correct, yeah.
And then you'd put 2 in as well.
Then we're adding 2 more, and then obviously all the understory vegetation, and we can add 3. You know, like we want it to work. We want it to be a place which attracts new species of birds, and really complements Wireless Hill. And we've engaged a professional in the landscape architect to do that, a horticulturalist, and so yeah, we're going to do what's necessary to make it work.
All right. The crossover on Ferguson Street, does that need retaining at all?
No, I mean, look, we would just ramp it up from grade. I mean, there might be a bit of retaining in the garage, but it sort of slopes down, so it'd be very minimal.
So near the curb, no retaining?
Because we're half a metre off, I'm pretty sure we can manage that with rock spall and sort of minimise the sort of level difference. There is a bit of a level difference there already, but
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Green.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just had a query about the redundant crossover, and will it be removed, or and will that area?
Yeah, look, it will, yes.
Yeah.
And it'll be landscaped, mulched. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I understand that the trees that you mentioned, you don't need to keep them, do you? It's quite hard for you when you demolish the building to work around it. So it's quite commendable that you're keeping the trees. But is there an issue that working around the trees, or is it easier just to remove them? You know? For most developers, anyway. Yes.
Well, look, I mean, the tree working around the trees is not an issue. We can work around the trees. The trees being that we're seeking to have removed or replaced just don't. They're too close to the crossover, and so council policy requires a 2-metre clearance from the edge of the crossover to the verge tree, and we just can't fit a crossover next to the tree, a compliant crossover next to the tree. So we're happy to put a non-compliant crossover next to the tree, one that's closer to the tree. We've had an arborist involved who believes it's possible to design a crossover that doesn't negatively impact that tree, even though it's closer. But the Verge Department has concerns about maintaining that type of crossover.
Okay, thank you. Are there, Councillor Spanbrook?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a question, though, for the Manager of Natural Areas and Parks, or the Director.
We'll move on to that in a moment,
Right,
yeah.
thank you.
Okay, any further questions to those who presented the deputation? Okay, if there are no further questions, we'll move on to the officers. Thank you very much for your deputation.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, have we got the contact details of the architect? And we do? Okay, thanks.
Yes, they've actually agreed to be contacted. So if you have any questions for them after the meeting, between now and the council meeting, they are available, and we have the contact details. Thank you, Mr. Bird, who is the Manager of Natural Areas and Parks, and he's going to make a presentation to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to start off, I just want to clarify that this item is in relation to the one tree, the Queensland box tree, so it's not 2 trees being asked to be removed. So I just want to clarify that before we commence. So basically, the tree at 21 Ferguson Street to be in question is a mature Lophostophon, a Queensland box tree. It's a height of 7 meters and a canopy spread of up to 9 meters. Trunk diameter of 60 centimeters, and the tree was found to be in a good, healthy condition with a full canopy and healthy foliage. Next slide, please. So this slide just highlighting the proposed crossover. So the Queensland box tree we just looked at is where that proposed crossover is located, and the existing crossover on Barnard Street is the one that's been discussed. Something that was not included in the report is community feedback. So we sent letters to 23 residents or properties surrounding the site, and we received 12 responses, and 11 of those responses agreed for the tree to be removed, with only 1 that did not agree. So I think that's important to note that. And that's it. So you can go back to the previous slide. So yeah, short and sweet. Any questions?
Thank you. We have a few. Councillor Spanbrook.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you. With the fauna that forage in the Queensland box tree and the 5 that they've actually put up to show that they are happy to replace the tree with one of those, which ones would be a better tree for birds and insects and bees? And one of the 5, I'll probably throw in a bit of a curveball, I should say. So as opposed to retaining the Queensland box tree.
Mr. Bird.
Through the chair. Difficult question. It's not a native tree, so maybe some of the native birds or insects may not enjoy that one as they would another, but we find even with non-native trees, we have an abundance of bird life and creatures living in those trees. So yeah, it's hard. It's a difficult question to answer in terms of do they prefer one or the other. I'd say in general, trees are pretty equal in terms of how they're habitated.
Yes, Councillor Spanbrook.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. What about the roots? Like, how deep do the roots grow down? Between, from the Queensland box tree as opposed to the others? Probably another curveball. Sorry. So, is there a potential for damage for the Queensland box tree? Reticulation or other areas, and the fact that they've already got 8 trees on their verge, it's really quite remarkable that they've still got 8 trees there. But anyway, thank you.
Mr. Bird?
Through the chair, roots grow everywhere. Every tree, every condition, every site is different. Some tree roots grow deep, some grow shallow. Certain species of trees have different patterns, but in general, there's a lot of surface roots, and we'll have some deep feeder roots. Across all tree species. Box trees can sit at the surface. It depends on the watering of that property. But yeah, they're all different and unique to their situation.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I meant to include one other question in there.
Yeah, Councillor, can I come back to you? Because I've got a list of people waiting to speak. Councillor Robbins?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, just 2 quick ones. I know you said, Mr. Bird, that the item is only about removal of the Queensland box trees, but can I just ask what is the position with regards to the rubber tree? Is it being removed or retained?
Mr. Bird?
Through the chair, so that tree is not being assessed. We haven't looked at that tree to make a determination. So if that request to remove the tree would be a separate issue that we'd have to look at.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is just about, I guess, the feasibility of redesigning the development application. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming when you assess the request for the removal of the tree, you look at how reasonable it would be for the house to be redesigned. Is that correct?
Ms Bainbridge, planning?
Through the chair. Our team worked extensively with the applicants to try and use the existing crossover location, work through alternate design solutions to retain the trees. That's always our prerogative, to try and retain trees and remove that requirement. But ultimately, we ended up with a design which is fully compliant with the planning framework, and there's an avenue through different legislation, being the Local Government Act, and our necessary local laws to apply for crossover and tree removals within the verge property. So we were left with a development application which we didn't have reasonable planning grounds to refuse. And we tried to work with the applicant, gave them multiple options. We could put your application on hold whilst you go through this process, but they elected to obtain the development approval from us and work through this process separately. So if they don't obtain the necessary approval for the crossover and tree removal, there are a couple of different options. They can redesign their entire development to obtain access from a different location, or they can appeal the decision of the city through the State Administrative Tribunal under Local Government Act legislation, which would have the city provide a respondent which has the necessary power and qualifications to provide advice on crossover and street tree matters.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I wonder if you just address why the proposed alternative crossover design, which would have allowed the tree to be retained, was deemed unsuitable. And whether, I appreciate we're looking at whether the tree can be removed, but is there any mechanism for revisiting that? Though, I mean, depending on your answer to the first question, we may not want to revisit it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bird?
Thank you, through the chair. If I heard that correctly, it was around the crossover and the application for that crossover. Our verge treatment officer had to look at the proposed crossover, and it didn't meet a number of requirements to meet our crossover design specifications. So there's a number of things that were concerning to the officer, and it's in the report listed the reasons behind why that application wasn't approved.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald, did you have a further question?
Yeah, I guess I was looking for a little more than that, because having read the report, it kind of mentions only maintenance and closeness to the tree and concern on impact to the tree. We've heard from the applicant that they've had an arborist who assures them that impact on the tree will be minimal. It's not clear to me whether this is sort of a sightlines and safety issue, and I'm trying to get a handle on what the concern is with regard to maintenance.
Through the chair. So one of the biggest issues about the crossover was that it was elevated and had a rise to it. So if somebody's walking down the verge or riding their bicycle, there is potential for impact with the raised crossover. So that was the main concern. So I guess if you're riding your bike down the verge, you hit the crossover, you could fall down potentially. That was one of the main concerns about what was proposed. I'm not sure, does that helps? Mick, you might be able to add to that.
Mr. McCarthy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess a couple of other aspects as well as that are trip hazard. The raised platform was very close to the tree. It was only 14 centimetres away from the edge of the tree to the edge of the raised platform, which was also over a sewer line. So getting access to it with a raised platform from a servicing point of view may have created issues if that had been required. Another aspect was with the alternative crossover, it wasn't just a straight reverse that you would do out of the driveway. You would have to negotiate around it. So essentially would create a potential hazard in terms of backing into it. And also with the raised platform, when we looked at a standard size SUV, that with the raised platform and the growth of the tree, there was a potential that if you had an SUV with a roof rack, you would make contact, potential to make contact with the lower branches of the tree whilst going under the tree. Now, you can prune those off, but they were pretty major structural branches of the tree. So we looked at it from an amenity, a safety, and also in terms of potential future impacts of the tree from being used in that way.
Okay, Councillor Wheatland.
Yeah, thanks. Just a question about if this gets approved, about the, because I did note that the gentleman representing the Morenos said that, they would get a tree as mature as possible considering the amount of money they could spend on it. If hypothetically, if the box tree is approved to be removed, would they then have to replace the tree of a similar value, like $29,000?
Mr. Bird?
Yeah, thanks through the chair. I just want to clarify again. So this is not part of a DA application. So if this tree was removed, it's a decision that the council would make, and it's, as such, the city would be responsible for the costs of removal and replacement of this tree. So we would work with the property owner to find another tree to plant and work out whether there's enough space on the verge for that tree. If not, we'd plant it elsewhere in the city.
Thank you. Councillor Spanbrook, back to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll leave it. Thank you.
All right, are there any further questions to officers? Councillor Woodall.
Sorry, could I just clarify? My understanding, and I'm happy to be corrected, but my understanding was that with the policy we had amended it at some point to say that if there was an application for removal that was approved, the cost of removal and the cost of a replacement tree would be borne by the applicant. That was my understanding.
Mr. Bird, can you clarify that?
Yeah, through the chair. If a tree is removed as part of a DA process, then the applicant will pay for the tree to be removed and replaced. In this case, as it's not part of a DA and the city or the council are making a decision to remove the tree, then we would bear those costs.
Councillor Woodall?
So just following on from that, I guess it would be within the council's discretion as to who pays for those costs. I believe we previously have approved a removal, but we added that the applicant bore the responsibility for the cost of removal and replacement tree. So that's within the council's discretion.
I'll just get some advice on that. Councillor, Miss Newman, Head of Governance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, we might just take that one on notice and we'll review the policy and precedent in relation to trees on verges. Thank you.
Councillor Spanbrook, did you have a question?
I will ask the question if I may, Madam
Okay,
Mayor.
Councillor Spanbrook.
With Queensland box trees, because they do have an issue with the not gum nuts, I'm not even really sure what the official name of them is. And I do recall back a couple of years ago, Beamish, I think it was Beamish Street, there was a home being constructed and there were issues with the Queensland box tree, and they were requesting for that to be removed. Do you recall that that came to council? So with that, and I do recall on the street when they did a survey, the majority of people agreed for the tree to go. So my question is that as there has been a strategy with a number of local governments to remove Queensland box trees because they're not native to WA, and also they've been replacing them with native species, then if it comes down to it, and let's just say for argument's sake that the owners of the property, that they then pay for the removal, and isn't that a good thing? And to replace it with a native species? I know we don't have a strategy to remove Queensland box trees, but it's not a bad thing, though. What's your
I think that
opinion
sounds
on
like
this?
you're requesting an opinion. Yeah, I think that...
You're saying they can't do that? They can't do... If the officer chooses to just provide some suggestion or opinion or something?
would you be happy to do that, Mr Bird?
Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair, I guess a Queensland box tree, regardless if it's from here or not, this tree is a healthy tree and provides canopy and provides habitat. So the loss of it would be I guess a detrimental move, in protecting our urban forest in the city of Melville.
Okay, Councillor Wheatland, do you have a question?
Sorry, just a quick question. Look, I'm just casting my mind back to similar requests for tree removal that have come to me or come to council. And is there any way before the ordinary meeting of council we can have an overview of what have come to council for removal in relation to crossover locations, and so we can see what the outcomes are of those decision-making processes? Because I can remember two clear cases for me where I've had people in Willagee and people in Alfred Cove seeking help to remove a tree so they can put their crossover in, and I'm pretty sure they'll refuse. Could that be done? Sorry, could that be done, please?
Ms Bowman, CEO.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. We will take that question on notice and see whether officers can provide that information. Mr Bird, did you want to add something? Thanks.
Yeah, through the chair, I just want to add, our officers do approve the removal of trees when there is no other option available. In this case, there's an existing crossover, and in the officer's opinion, there is adequate space for the existing crossover to be retained. I understand it's a redesign of the house, but what I guess I'm trying to highlight is that we will allow removal of trees when there is no other option for a design or a build of a house.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions from elected members to officers? If there are no further questions, thank you very much, Mr Bird. Okay, we're moving on to the next item now. C25-266 investment statements for March. Are there any questions? Thank you. Mr Tuffin is available for questions on these matters. So C25-267, Schedule of Accounts paid for March 2025. Are there any questions for officers? Next item, C25-268, Statements of Financial Activity for March 2025. Any questions? Moving on to item C25-269, 410 Canning Highway, Attadale Commercial Optimisation Investigation. Now, just to remind elector members that attachment to this item is considered confidential, and if you wish to ask questions in relation to the attachment, I will hold this item to the end of the meeting, so we may go behind closed doors. Are there any questions on the attachments? All right. Any questions on the item itself without the attachment? Councillor Roberts.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, is this the Bridge Club item, or is? Oh, sorry.
No, it's the 410 Canning Highway on the corner of Stock Road and Canning Highway. Yeah.
Next one, I've got a question.
All right. Okay, any questions on this item? Now we're moving on to the item you probably have a question for. So C25-270, 788-794 Canning Highway, Applecross Commercial Optimisation Investigation. So again, there is a confidential attachment. If you wish to discuss it, we need to hold it to the end of the meeting to go behind closed doors. But if you have any questions about the matters that are public, you are welcome to ask a question now. Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is just around the trees and our requirements about maintaining some of those trees. Is it the view of the officers that that is likely to put off some people who may otherwise submit is it called a request for proposal, whatever it's called, sorry. Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering whether we are limiting ourselves by having those requirements.
Mr Tuffin, Director of Corporate Services. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, the recommendation is to retain those trees, and yes, in all likelihood, by retaining them, will reduce the value of the property because it will restrict the extent of available developable area.
Councillor Robbins. Are there any further questions on this item, particularly on the agenda item, not the attachments? Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Fitzgerald, you're happy to talk about the item in the report that's public?
Yes. So
thank you.
Just the trees that are flagged as, medium retention, worthwhile. On my eyeballing the plan, it looks as though many of them run either along or adjacent to the existing sewer line. I just wonder, is that accurate? And to what extent does that mean that there is a significant impact on an area that's otherwise already unable to be developed because of the location of that line?
Mr Tuffin?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The sewer line runs between lots, I think, 790 and 792. Apologies if that's not correct. It's a little difficult from the diagram. So almost through the centre of the four properties, running parallel with Simpson Street. In regards to the trees and the retention, part of the recommendation is to do a further assessment in relation to those trees to see if, I guess, whether their current classification is still relevant as was previously recorded. So in terms of the sewer, I don't know that that's going to impact the trees a whole lot as it currently lays through the property. I'm not sure if that's answered your question.
No, I'll look at it in a bit more detail. Thank you.
Are there any further questions for Mr Tuffin regarding this matter? Okay, let's move on to the next item, and that's C25-271, 2025-2026 rating strategy. We have already quite thoroughly discussed this, but if there are any further questions, we'll take them now. Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next one, C25-279, Policy and Legislation Committee nomination request. This is a separate item. So Ms Newman, Head of Governance, is available to take questions. Are there any questions? Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is it appropriate to ask questions of the councillor seeking to join that committee?
Well, it's probably a discussion you can have with the councillor later because we're not making a decision tonight.
No worries, thanks.
Councillor Woodall.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask in terms of, in general, the committees and the structure, are there particular limits about, how many committees a councillor can be on or total committee numbers for particular committees? I just recall that previously there was a situation where I think councillors who are no longer with us had to swap. They both wanted to be on the committee, and there was a significant disagreement, and we ended up, I think, putting both on. I'm just conscious of wanting to avoid a situation where we make ad hoc decisions based on, a particular councillor wanting to be on X committee, and I feel you need to sort of have a consistent approach. So I just wondered what the general requirements and rules were around that.
Thank you. Ms Newman, Head of Governance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. So there's no restrictions on how many committees we can have, but there are some restrictions on the types of committees and the makeup of those. In terms of numbers, the legislation provides must be a minimum of 3. We underwent a review of our committee structure late last year, and we adopted a new structure and a new, membership for each of the committees, and we were looking at about 5 members per committee, and we're no longer going by the ward system that we previously had. This would change the terms of reference as they were adopted, and we would need to consider whether or not we wanted to retain that membership going forward post the 2025 local government elections. So there's a couple of things to be considered in all of that. Having said that, the Policy and Legislation Committee is a new committee, and the intent is for elected members to have the opportunity to provide structure and comment on policies as they're being developed. So you'd need to probably weigh up which part of that Policy and Legislation Committee you'd feel is better with the membership or the ability for elected members to have input through that process.
And what about numbers? Can you give us some idea of, is there a limitation on numbers on committees?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So there is no limitation on numbers, but I guess the thing to keep in mind is we have 13 elected members, and the committees are not a decision-making. They're really to provide guidance and direction when we're developing policies in this forum, and then council makes the final decision. So it's really about determining whether or not you want to have more than your absolute majority on a committee when making those recommendations to council.
Can you just confirm how many are on that committee at the moment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, there's 5 on the committee at the moment, and Councillor Spanbrook is actually a deputy for that committee.
Councillor Woodall?
Would it be possible, I don't know if it's possible as part of the council item, but is it possible to look at setting a maximum number of councillors per committee? It'd be good to know, how many councillors and how many positions there are. It's just, I don't think it's a risk where everyone suddenly wants to be on the Policy and Legislation Committee, but committee would effectively become, I think, pretty unworkable, and there'd not be much purpose having it if every single elected member was on it. Then it may as well be an EMIS or some other forum. So in terms of keeping the committees workable and whatnot, I don't have an issue per se with the request to have from Councillor Spanbrook to be on that committee, but I think we want to set some kind of, my view is we'd want to set some kind of limit just to avoid a situation where a committee becomes unworkable because there's too many councillors on it.
Thank you, Councillor Woodall. Are there any further questions? Councillor Barber?
Mayor, I do notice that Councillor Spanbrook is currently a deputy. Does that would, if she was appointed to the P&L committee, does that mean we'd have to appoint another deputy?
Ms Newman?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. you could appoint another deputy, but we did restructure the committees in a way to try and have elected members that were interested as members or deputies. So we do already have deputies on there that could provide that to other the elected members who are full members.
And just to follow up, Madam Mayor, if I may, and could you just remind us of the quorum? Is it at least 3 or?
Ms Newman? Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, the quorum is 3.
Councillor Wheatland.
Sorry, I'm not sure if this question's been asked, but can anyone attend a meeting as an observer anyway and participate?
Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. Yes, all elected members are able to attend the committee meetings, and it has been the past practice to allow observers to participate in the discussion but not to vote on matters. Thank you.
Okay, but it's not a decision-making forum, but is it?
Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. It's not a decision-making forum, it is just to make recommendations to Council.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I've asked you before about the observer coming along and asked to vote. Is that, I think you say it's possible before the meeting, asking to vote, permission to vote.
Thank you, Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. So an observer can only be requested to vote, or can be given voting rights where we don't have a quorum for the committee of existing members. For example, if the committee membership was 5 and the quorum was the quorum was 3 and 2 members turned up, but we had an observer turned up, the committee can actually offer to give the rights to vote to produce a quorum so the committee can be held. So if an observer's there attending to watch and we don't have a quorum or we don't have a sufficient number, we can give them voting rights, yes.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As this is the Policy and Legislation Committee, and with the committee members assessing and drafting recommendation to Council from the decisions that or consensus that is made within the committee itself, I think that it can be quite impactful and quite influential when it does come to Council.
Are you asking a question?
So, can I get there?
Yeah, if you're debating,
Can
it sounds like you're debating.
No,
so if you ask a question,
I'm
that
giving
would be
a
helpful.
preamble to my question. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Can you keep it short?
I need to be emphatic. No, not emphatic. I need to explain where I'm going for when I ask the question. So with policy and legislation, it's important to have a number of people, even though there's only 5 at the moment, no different to the other committees, but the more people you have on such a committee as the policy and legislation, the more contest of ideas that you get. And I think that's very important when considering policy. So therefore, I would like to know that if there's any issue from a governance perspective, if there is 6 people on a committee, any committee for that matter. Thank you.
Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. There is no issue from a governance perspective. Our terms of reference for that committee were adopted last year and have a membership of 5. To increase the membership, we require an absolute majority decision of Council. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, if there's no further questions, let's move on to the next item, and that is response to petition Burke Drive Traffic Calming Strategy E2568. Are there any questions for Mr McCarthy? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Continuing from Councillor Wooder's comment last night, just wondering, is that the speed hump is the only option? It seems that it's the only, and the secondly is there have been a lot of challenges to the height of the speed hump, Burragoon, and the current one is Winthrop. Why is that? Because I spoke to Kimberly and she said we abide by the Australian standard height, but it seems that a lot of people are challenging it and What is the reason? Thank you.
Mr McCarthy, Environment and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks for your question, Councillor Lee. So we are not formulating a solution here without undertaking the proper assessment. We're not looking at just jumping to speed humps. We'll be looking at all alternatives. If there is a type of solution that will be able to deal with the issues. And the issues along Burke Drive are not speeding per se. Yes, they're a little bit over the speed limit, but they're more about the incidence of crashes along that area as outlined in the report. So we need to come up with a solution that addresses that. In regards to your questions on the different heights of speed humps around the place, the city has been moving more towards the speed plateaus, which have a less impact on vehicles, but still enable the vehicles to be slowed down to sufficient speed to then ensure that they will not speed further on that section of road. But we would look at the whole range of options in regards to all of our speed reduction strategies, and the officers have got the message clear from the elected members that there would be consideration of alternatives that could be available to achieve the same outcome without speed humps involved.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just in relation to the just the report seemed to identify a large number of the crashes involving injury involved cyclists. I believe large numbers of cyclists use it in the morning, groups of cyclists. Does Burke Drive have, I think I know the answer to the question, but does Burke Drive currently have bike lanes, and would that be looked at as part of the assessment?
Mr McCarthy.
So through the chair, it currently doesn't have dedicated bike lanes, but it has got a principal shared path that runs within the reserve section. So a lot of cyclists use the principal shared path, but in terms of the early morning commuters to work, the peloton type cyclists, they use the road section of the road, and because they're travelling at higher speed and in larger groups, they prefer to use a main route along the river via the road than the principal shared paths that are on offer along the way.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Let's move on to the next item then. UP 2566, Review of Local Planning Policy 1.9, Height of Buildings and Local Planning Policy 3.1, Residential Development. Are there any elected members who... Oh, well, first of all, prior to discussion, the Acting Director of Planning, Ms Bainbridge, will make a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, councillors and Mayor. So this is a presentation on the draft amendments to Local Planning Policy 3.1, which covers residential development, and the proposed revoking of Local Planning Policy 1.9, which covers building height for residential development. So next slide, please. So the context of this review is to essentially bring it closer into alignment with the residential design codes to provide a more simplified planning framework and rationalise some of the provisions. It also offers an opportunity to remove any ambiguity in relation to interpretations around Supreme Court case findings as well as SAT case findings. So just make it nice and simple for the everyday users of our policy. It's also an opportunity to look at some of our provisions and rationalise some of them to bring them into closer alignment with our community expectations. So next slide, please. So the biggest change we're proposing is to revoke Local Planning Policy 1.9 and relocate some of the provisions into LPP 3.1. Currently, the policy applies to all residential development, and since it was previously reviewed, we've had a substantial reviews to the residential design codes, which have substantially reduced the need for this type of policy. We've also got a couple of provisions which have some conflicts with our codes definitions. And we are currently seeing a fair few developments, especially in the single residential space, pushing the boundaries of the heights that are permitted generally compared to the residential design codes. So what we're proposing to do is relocate some of the provisions into LPP 3.1 to allow for modest discretion on sloping sites towards the lower side of the lot. But this would still permit people to apply for the same heights as what currently are permitted under the local planning policy. It would just require the exercise of discretion, which includes more rigorous assessment and more consultation with neighbouring properties. So next slide, please. So just run through quickly the key changes, the majority being at the front end administrative in nature to make it more legible and easier to interpret and understand. The actual provisions that are proposed to be simplified to ensure greater consistency are the secondary street setbacks and the setbacks of garages and carports, just to be as per the R codes. We're also proposing to simplify the garage width provisions, which would bring it into closer alignment with the R codes and actually probably increase the number of applications received in that space. Next slide, please. And the other changes are to tighten up the sightline requirements, just to require that the pier is located adjacent to the driveway to make it a bit safer for the 45-degree sightline requirements for less than 3 dwellings, as well as make some of our provisions a little bit more enforceable, namely the fences and street walls, to include something called a local housing objective. It's a very planner term for a design principle that's only specific to a local government. And as I mentioned before, some removing some definitions to make it more consistent with the R codes and introduction of height provisions, as mentioned previously. Next slide, please. So just to summarise, the crux of the amendments are to simplify, make it more consistent with the R codes and make it nice and easy for a lot of our applicants, to rationalise the building height provisions, to bring it into closer alignment with the R codes. But just to reiterate that people still ask for discretion, and which would require a design principles approach and advertising for a lot of circumstances. So there's still the ability to apply for similar heights and the like as what people are applying for now. So if adopted next week, we propose to advertise for 21 days, and if comments are received, to refer back to council for further consideration, and if no comments are received, to adopt and finalise accordingly. Thank you. Any questions?
Okay, councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My first question is about some of the changes to the street setbacks. Oh, first of all, Kate, thanks for your presentation, and Ms Bainbridge, thank you for your presentation, and thank you especially for the table on pages 81 and 82, which outline how LPP 3.1 has previously modified the R codes. That was really helpful. I still found it a little bit hard to understand, because I don't know the R codes off by heart. I did try and look it up and compare it, but I struggled a little bit to understand what the modifications were from the R codes to our current LPP 3.1. So yeah, my first question is about the street setbacks. So my understanding from what I've read and previous discussions around this is that up until now, our LPP 3.1 has had requirements regarding setbacks from the secondary street, which I assume is to improve amenities, so that, like, if you've got a house on the corner, it looks nice to both the primary and secondary frontages. So could you maybe just go through the change that's proposed, and perhaps maybe just try and address my concern that if we go with what is in the R codes, that it's not going to be just like a plain wall on the secondary street? Thanks.
Ms Bainbridge.
Thank you, and through the chair. Initially it was to increase the setback requirements from the residential design codes, and your initial comment about being confused is something that we often get from the community, and that was one of the primary sort of motivations for trying to rationalise this policy. What we were finding is that people were still applying for what was in the residential design codes, and then we're going to often go back and ask them to bring it back, and then they would come back and say, no, we'd like to apply for discretion. So it was just, we're getting a lot of people coming in and just wanting to apply for what the residential design codes are seeking. And so we sort of do the necessary advertising, and we're not getting a lot of feedback from the community to contradict that they have specific concern around the secondary street setbacks. So it is a proposed rationalisation of that provision based on our lived experiences in trying to implement it. But ultimately, it's council's prerogative, if you see it to be of benefit, to retain those provisions as they currently are in the policy.
Thank you. And so just go to the other part of my question, which was about, I guess, the outcome in terms of if we do go to get rid of what we had and just go with the R codes, does that mean that the secondary street is just a blank fence?
Ms Bainbridge?
Sorry, through the chair. The provisions that are currently in our policy just relate to setbacks, so increasing the setback requirements. So there's nothing to prevent someone from still putting a fence up, from to not necessarily having the same level of passive surveillance to the street or anything specific of that nature. It's just in relation to the setbacks, as I understand. So it is trying to bring it into closer alignment with the R codes, which does allow for closer setbacks. And the reason being is our experience is that people are just reading the residential design codes and applying for what's in the residential design codes, and then not wanting to necessarily amend their plans to comply with our policy and wanting to go down the path of seeking discretion. And then the feedback we receive from the community is that they don't really seem to have much of an issue with that. So it is something that we're trying to make it simple for the community in applying for applications. But we can keep going with what we're doing, which is to keep requiring or requesting people to increase their setbacks as per our policy.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms Bainbridge. Are there any further questions? Do you have another one? Councillor Robbins?
Thank you. Ms Bainbridge, I read with interest the paragraph about the Supreme Court ruling in 2022 about, and correct me if I don't explain it properly, but the R codes, our local planning policy not being able to be more restrictive than the R codes. I guess just wondering where there's scope for us to introduce provisions to improve amenity. I guess I'm just concerned that the R codes are very black and white, and I understand you're saying we should just go with the R codes because it's easier and it makes it easier for people to understand what they need to do when they submit a development application, and I understand that. I guess I just feel like over time we have crafted our LPPs to deliver a better outcome, and by just getting rid of all of that, it concerns me that we're going to result in a less optimal outcome.
Ms Bainbridge.
Thank you, through the chair. It is really concerning, that Supreme Court case finding. I think there was initially from the SAT in, 2022, and then they went through a full process through the Supreme Court, and the decision came out late last year and totally changed it created a lot of uncertainty in the statutory planning space, and this policy response is to provide less ambiguity for both our applicants and also for officers and how we should be interpreting our policies. But ultimately, if it's yet to be fully tested in all contexts, and so if it is council's prerogative to try and maintain some of these provisions because of the belief of the desire to see a greater amenity outcome, then we'll do so. We'll keep those provisions. We'll obviously need an alternate recommendation to what we've put forward. But we are receiving feedback from the development community, and we're also trying to balance these. So we put forward through this policy based on feedback and lived experience of state implementing the policy, but ultimately it's council's prerogative as to what you would like us to proceed with. So some provisions we've proposed to rationalise to make it more onerous. Say, for example, the garage width, that's now more in line with the R codes, which is more onerous than what our policy permits. The policy has greater flexibility, so which we think is a negative outcome. Same with building height. Our policy allows for much higher building heights than what the R codes do, so we're proposing to rationalise it so that we can, as a minimum, require more applications so we can apply more rigorous assessment. So it's just based on our lived experience to date and community feedback from our development application assessment. So ultimately, we're not married to it either way. It's your policy, and what you decide to do with it, we will enforce.
Thank you, Ms Bainbridge. Are there any further questions? All right, thank you. Appreciate your presentation and answering questions. Moving on to item UP 2567, review of local planning policy, provision of public art in development proposals. Are there any questions? Ms Bainbridge will answer those if you have any. All right, if there's no questions, we'll move on to the next item, UP 2568, review of local planning policy, parking and access. So I would like to invite Director of Planning, Ms Bainbridge, again, to make an officer presentation. Thank you.
Thank you again. So firstly, just want to publicly thank all those who've contributed to this review. It's been a bit of a journey, which the review's been contributed to by members of the community, previous staff, elected members and external consultants. So it's been a real collaboration and I think also accumulation of lessons learned and best practice in improving our processes and outcomes for development. So I just wanted to start out with that because it's, I think, really important. Next slide, please. So the crux of this review is in response to clarifying the city's expectations on ramp gradients and sightlines for applicants and improving the safety for all road and footpath users. It also offers an opportunity to align with regulations and legislation changes since the last review, which is all the way back in, I believe, 2019, so some time ago. Hopefully can review our policies a bit more regularly in the future. As I mentioned before, really important for us to be very clear and articulate the city's expectations to the community as well as applicants about pedestrian sightlines and vehicle ramp gradients to be consistent with the Australian standards. So just want to further reiterate that a local planning policy and Australian standards are they can be varied, they're not legislation, so we did receive legal advice on the best way to incorporate the Australian standards, which has informed the city's position and approach to policy review. Next slide, please. So following feedback from the community, we made a number of minor changes and then we referred that to the DPLH officers for their review. And then we incorporated a couple of more administrative changes in its formatting. And then that was reported to the WAPC and approved back in February. So we received a commendation on our approach, which I think was a really big win for the city. And so now we are presenting the evolution of the final policy for council's adoption. So following resolution next week, if it's adopted, the next thing we were looking to do is prepare our parking management and cash and lieu strategy, which is, I'm very excited to get involved with that. Next slide, please. So just the crux of the advertising feedback. The changes that we could make post-advertising are namely more administrative in nature to ensure appropriate implementation enforcement, and they don't alter the intent to ensure compliance with the Australian standards. But a number of the advertising feedbacks did make some suggested edits which we can consider as part of a future review. If we were to consider them now, we'd probably need to re-advertise, which would slow down our implementation of the main provisions of these, this review being the sightlines and ramp gradients. There's also been some misinterpretation as to what a policy can and can't do. So we can't just comply with this policy or remove the ability for someone to apply for a performance solution. This policy provides it really clear as to when we require a technical assessment by a qualified engineer, and sort of make it much clearer for our applicants as to the standards that we require when you submit such a report, so that it's very clear to our applicants as well as our community when we're seeking performance solution and if it's acceptable or not. Sorry, next slide, please. Again, please, next slide. So yeah, again, a number of these comments and concerns we can take into consideration as part of a future review, but to consider them now would slow down this review and require re-advertising. So we're proposing to capture these and look at them at a later stage after we've done the parking strategy. Sorry, next slide, please. So as mentioned before, the changes are namely administrative in nature, just to make sure that it's enforceable, makes reference to the right section of the R codes, and that we can sort of ensure enforcement moving forward. One of the comments made from the advertising was actually in relation to verge and footpath users, and just make it really clear it's verge users, so that's not just for people on the footpath, but also anyone who's walking somewhere else or riding somewhere else. Sorry, next slide, please. Again, all administrative changes to align with policy templates and ensure appropriate application. There's no move away from the intent to apply Australian standards for gradients and sightlines. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So the feedback, where possible, has been incorporated into the policy. Other feedback will consider as part of future review. The WAPC has endorsed and commended the city's approach to sightlines and gradients. Other changes from DPLH are administrative in nature and do not change the intent of what we advertised. So the officer recommendation is to support with revised changes. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Ms Bainbridge? If there are no questions, we'll move on to item UP 2569, Local Planning Policy 1.1, Planning Processes and Decision Making. Prior to discussion on this item, we will invite Ms Bainbridge again to make an officer presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Final one, I promise. Local Planning Policy 1.1, we only just reviewed it, unfortunately, but then the state government very unexpectedly dropped some new regulations, which we weren't anticipating. So we just need to make sure that we are in alignment with those regulations. So next slide, please. So on the 1st of May, the Local Government Development Assessment Panel's Regulations 2005 were gazetted. So these regulations now require that the CEO or subdelegate is the author of responsible authority reports to development assessment panels. So this now prevents responsible authority reports from being called up for recommendation to be adopted or changed at council meeting. Sorry, next slide, please. So what does this mean for DAPs in the future? Responsible authority reports unfortunately cannot be called up by council. They need to be finalised by city officers and submitted to the DAPS Secretariat prior to the due date. So our local planning policy needs to be updated to remove up the call-up procedures to ensure consistency with the new regulations. We've received preliminary advice from the DPLH that extensions of time to facilitate reporting to council, even for information purposes, will not be granted by the presiding member. Community members are unable to what we are proposing to do to make sure that the DAP meetings are still accessible to the community is to invite any submitters who are unable to attend in person at the 140 million offices or online to advise the city officers so that we can make arrangements for them to attend online via the city's offices to ensure that we're still making our forums accessible for the community. Next slide, please. So what's not changing? We will continue to use the EMB to advise once a DAP application is lodged, when the DAP is being advertised, the outcome of advertising, and when the DAP meeting will be held. So we'll continue using the elected members bulletin for those communications. Please note we only have 60 to 90 days for DAP applications to be determined, with additional time requiring applicant consent and permission from the DAP presiding member. So just to conclude, it's just a change to ensure regulation alignment, so it's administrative change, so we're not required to advertise under the regulation requirements. Thank you.
Okay, questions? Councillor Edinger.
Thank you, Ms Bainbridge, for your presentation. Would the elected members be able to access the RAR via the DAP agenda? And if so, could a link to that be sent out in the EMB so that we have access to it? Thanks.
Ms Bainbridge.
So through the chair, once the RAR is submitted to the DAP Secretariat, we can circulate, I believe, through the EMB the final copy of the RAR before it's published. Yeah, I don't see any issue with that, but I'll confirm with governance as to that. But I don't see any issue with that. They're usually published, I believe, a couple of days after we submit. And they're usually on a Friday at 12 p.m. so that we have to submit by. So we'll see what we can do with regards to the EMB deadline.
Councillor Edinger.
If it's a particularly contentious issue, are elected members able to attend to do a deputation?
Ms Bainbridge.
Through the chair, that is absolutely possible for elected members to make a request to a deputation to the DAP Secretariat, and administration is more than happy to assist with that process.
Can I just ask a little clarification?
Yes, Councillor Edinger.
So would that be considered to be the elected member as an individual, or would it be a representation from the city?
Ms Bainbridge.
Through the chair, it's really important to make sure that you are making the deputation on behalf of yourself as an elected member or a member of the public. The city's position is represented through the 2 elected members that are on the DAP panel making the decision. Thank you.
Councillor Green.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms Bainbridge and perhaps the CEO, in submitting a responsible report, would you envisage that that's going to be done on the basis of discussion and feedback with elected members, or is it just something that's sort of in the hands of the city officers and the CEO?
Ms Bainbridge.
Thank you, through the chair. It's actually a really good question. The officer's report is supposed to be a really impartial technical assessment based on the planning framework. The elected member engagement in the process is really important at the sort of in the panel process, and this is why the regulation has been amended based on feedback with the wider community, the wider development community, and so it is important that we can give information throughout the process, and many local governments have processes around information sessions and the like to assist elected members, especially in their engagement with the community with contentious applications. But in terms of influencing the final report, it is a technical assessment that's supposed to be very impartial. So we can discuss some processes around information evenings and information sessions to make yourselves more informed about the issues, to be able to potentially make deputations, or if you're on the actual panel, make a recommendation or put forward your vote as to what would be the final outcome. That's something we can definitely discuss and make available through our processes.
Ms Newman, Ms Bowman, CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to be clear, we have received advice that elected members really only receiving information only, and that unfortunately, due to the changes, we can't receive input or feedback from elected members per se. So it is really providing information answering clarifying questions, but they have been quite specific that it's for information purposes only. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thanks very much. I'm sort of looking through the regulations at the moment. You don't need to turn around. It's okay. And I wonder, these regulations proposed changes, or have the changes come into effect yet?
Ms Bainbridge.
Through the chair, they came into effect on the 1st of May with not much notice, unfortunately.
Okay, so the 1st of May minutes. Okay. Would it be fair to characterise the substantive effect of these changes to be that they cut out really any mechanism for the council itself to determine the content of the RAR or the recommendation up to the DAP?
Ms Bainbridge.
Through the chair, that is correct. The intent of the regulations is to only have CEO and sub-delegates prepare the report, so there would be no elected member input into the finalisation of the report in their elected member capacity.
And then I guess the final question I've got is, given that the regulations also require us to carry the cost of preparation of the RAR, why would we bother?
Ms Bainbridge.
Thank you so much for that question. We receive 2 fees when we receive a development assessment panel application. So one is the DAP fee, which goes to the DAP Secretariat for the preparations and holding of the meetings, and the other is a normal local government fee, which we would be charging regardless if they elected to go through the DAP pathway or not. So we are paid a fee to prepare a report and prepare an assessment.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm quite concerned about this. It seems as if that there is a removal of the council from this process completely, and also reducing transparency and even to the community. So my question is that can the officers in another form, bring it to an EMIS once it has been submitted to the DAP, or before? Is there some leeway there that you can actually share the information with us, not in a public forum as such, but like in-house meeting? Thank you.
Ms Bainbridge.
Sorry. Thank you. Sorry about that. It's okay if I take that one on notice. Just want to make sure from a governance perspective what we can do in an EMS and what we can't. I think it's really important to reiterate CEO's position and a statement about information only purposes, and making sure whatever format that we have, we maintain the necessary legislative compliance. So if I can come back with more information, that would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wonder if, in terms of the advertising and the letters and whatnot on the web, or letters and also any emails or anything on the website around development applications that are going via the DAP process, is it possible just to make it crystal clear to residents, I guess, what the changes are firstly, to the extent it impacts them, but also just clarifying that effectively the council has no say whatsoever in the assessment? Because I'm not sure about other elected members, but there are a lot of residents who are sort of still under the, I guess there's this perception that the local government, the council, is responsible for planning matters, and with the DAP process, especially with these changes, it's just simply not the case at all. In fact, it's the exact opposite. And there's a disconnect between the fact that we are doing the advertising, but it's actually not us who are assessing. Well, the planning team provide an assessment, but the DAP doesn't even have to follow that assessment, as we've seen. So, yeah, I just wonder if operationally, if officers could look at the wording of the communications that goes out, just to make sure that it's very clear what the process is and who has responsibility.
Thank you. Ms Bainbridge.
Thank you, through the chair. Absolutely. I think it's really important to let the community know of the changes, and just to reiterate that elected members can make submissions on development applications as community members as well, and also advocate to anyone contacting you to please put submissions in. They're really helpful. We actually really like getting submissions. It helps us with our assessments. So yeah, I think it's the preferred approach, but we definitely want to increase our communications with our community about these changes because we didn't get the same opportunity from state government.
Thank you, Ms Bainbridge. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just had a question. It's clear now, I guess, that that councillors don't have input into the preparation of a RAR itself, but would city officers be bound in any way by policies of the city that they have essentially endorsed, or would they be bound in that way? And in that way, would council have somewhat more of a removed control over things, but a way of steering the reports and planning in that way, if that makes sense?
Ms Bainbridge.
Thank you so much for that question. I really love that question. Yes, having really good planning frameworks makes writing reports really easy. So having regularly reviewing our policy frameworks and making sure they're up to date and reflect our community's needs makes writing our reports and recommendations really easy, and making sure we're consistent with those. So absolutely, having good policy makes our jobs easy.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barber.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Ms Bainbridge, I'm worried that, and as Councillor Woodall's pointed out, that the council is being absolved from this situation. Residents will be concerned and will want to put their thoughts to the DAP, but they need education into planning principles, and that's by not bringing the RAR to council, that's robbing the residents of hearing planning principles and facts that could either help or hinder their argument. So how are we going to transfer the education of planning principles to our residents if we can't bring it to council?
Ms Bainbridge.
Thank you so much. I love the council forum for community members to engage with elected members because it's in the evenings, which is really accessible, and it's local, so it's really accessible for a lot of people. And they're talking to people that are on their side. So I think it's a really lovely forum, and it is upsetting that it is being taken away, especially given our, I think, really good format that we had, where you could call up the more contentious items. It created a really good balance of administrative, but without too much administrative burden. There does need to be more education in the community about planning matters. I love planning, and I love talking about planning, and I would love to be out there more talking about planning and the processes. They change all the time, which is really hard to stay on top of, and keeping the community informed. So yeah, through this, we do anticipate we will need to do a bit of work with the community to tell them about the changes, really encourage good quality submissions, help them with submissions, and potentially review our processes for more contentious applications to make more information available potentially in an information session in the evening during the advertising processes. So I'm definitely open to that, and I will take that on notice as to some ways that we can improve our education about planning matters, especially in this space with the community.
Thank you, Ms Bainbridge. Councillor Barber.
Just a quick follow-up question, and considering what Councillor Woodall said earlier, on our advertising board, when we do advertise it at the property, is it possible to put a small disclaimer at the bottom and say that this will be adjudicated by the DAP and not the City of Melville, words to that effect, but this happy to receive submissions on this, something along those lines?
Ms Bainbridge.
Through the chair, I'll take that on notice if possible, because the signage content is regulated now, but I feel it's a very small addition, so I think that's a fantastic suggestion. So we'll take that on notice and confirm.
Okay, thank you, Ms Bainbridge. Are there any? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just continuing, I'm just not following. You said that you welcome assessment from us, but does it make any difference? And is it just ticking the box exercise? I'm just wondering. You welcome assessment feedback from us. So what is the purpose if it's not going to have any influence on the final outcome? Thank you.
Ms Bainbridge.
Thank you through the chair. So the current process is that we have a process where more items which are of interest to elected members can be called up for consideration, and the officer recommendation can either be adopted or amended, and then the responsible authority report would be submitted to the development assessment panel. The development assessment panel can elect to have a different recommendation to the city. So there is that we don't have final say over the outcome of a development assessment panel, and that's not proposed to change. But our ability to influence, the elected members' ability to influence the recommendation to the development assessment panel is no longer there. So it is just the officers and the CEO and subdelegates who have to finalise the responsible authority report. So elected members' engagement in the development assessment panel process is now limited to submissions and the 2 panellist members on the decision-making panel.
Okay, are there any further questions for Ms Bainbridge? If there are no further questions, thank you very much for your presentations and all the questions you've answered. That brings us to the end of the report. Oh, yeah, I thought, where's that one? All right, moving to item 15, motions with previous notice. There are no motions with previous notice for discussion this evening, and motions without previous notice. There are no motions without previous notice for discussion this evening. Now, item 17, matters for which the meeting should be closed to the public. Okay. Prior to moving a motion to go behind closed doors, can I get an indication from elected members if they wish to ask questions in relation to item C25-272, confidential employee matter? Is there anybody who wants to ask questions? There doesn't appear to be anybody who wants to ask a question. Okay. So then we will move on to item 18. Decisions made while meeting was closed to the public. We did not go behind closed doors and no decisions were made. So 19, closure for the purposes of the notes. Can we have the following councillors confirm they're still in attendance? Councillor Whitland.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. There being no further business, I declare the meeting closed at 8:18. Thank you very much for your attendance.